Hello and welcome to the first episode of ARChat. One of your co-hosts, Stephen Dickens, and I'm joined by a couple of other co-hosts who are going to be with us every episode. Nathan Herman from Ericsson and Crystal Golightly from AI Insights. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Hey
Hello.
there.
We can't go any further though without introducing our first guest, the wonderful, the fabulous Jeanna Blatt from HPE. Jeanna, welcome to the show as our first
So
inaugural guest.
flattering. Thank you for having me.
We saved the best to first.
Absolutely.
So let's go around and do some introductions. We all know each other really well, but let's go around and do some introductions. Nathan, to my left and clockwise on the screen, so I'll go to you first.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Best for first again in this scenario. Is that how that works?
You can take it. You can take
Okay,
it.
okay, okay. We'll just say that I was the first one to your left. I'm Nathan Herman. I'm Analyst Relations Manager at Ericsson, specifically as a part of our Enterprise Wireless Solutions business area. I've been at Ericsson, formerly Cradlepoint, for about a year and a half now. Before that, I was at Spotlight Analyst Relations for about 2.5 years, and before that, I was a high school Spanish teacher. So a little bit of an unorthodox path to this particular career.
And Crystal, as our third co-host, sort of
Yeah.
your role.
So I am currently at AR Insights, and I say currently, which is weird because I've been there for almost 14 years, which is a very long time. I lead the customer experience team, and I have to say, I also stumbled here, Nathan, through by way of Wall Street. And yeah, totally unorthodox. I'm sure we could have a whole show on how did we stumble into this world of analyst research and analyst relations. So, yeah,
So
Absolutely.
Gina,
The answer is normally blindly.
yeah,
kicking
for
and
all of us,
screaming.
right? For all of us, I'm the same. So Gina is our first guest. Position your role.
Oh,
I feel really weird asking you because I know you so well, but
I know it's so Nathan, since I don't know you, this is for you.
Well, I
Thanks
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I have stewardship over analyst relations at Hewlett Packard Enterprise globally. So it's a pretty broad role. And what's interesting about the way you've all teed it up is you said you've stumbled into AR. I actually directed my career into AR. And so very a little bit of a different approach. I started out like a lot of people, either in, whether it's from an analyst, business analyst perspective, and a little bit of corporate comms and public relations. And then I started seeing this analyst relations field pop up and grow, and I was fascinated. So I worked my way into doing it exclusively.
and that's a really good framing. This is episode one of AR Chat. This is going to be a monthly podcast. And I think that gives us a really good segue into what's going to be the rest of the show, Gina, as we talk about kind of how people got into this field, what this field looks like. The purpose of the show for our new listeners here and viewers is to be able to interview some of the luminaries in the analyst relations community and really sort of double click on what technology analysts do, what value they bring to organizations, how they can really sort of help guide product leaders and the executive leadership team, craft messages, research the market. We're going to dive into all those topics as we go through this show. But Crystal, I know you've got a first question to get us going. So let's dive
Yeah.
straight in.
Great. So, a little bit more background is one of the things that I am sort of curious about, and I didn't know that you actually were purposeful, Jaina, about your AR pathway. I think that's one of the first times I've heard that. So, wow, bravo. I love that. So what was
Hashtag work joy.
my like deep question is like, how do we think this even started? So you may have a better insight to this because you were purposeful. So you must have seen this beautiful orchestration of work happening. So please share with us.
Well, I hope I'm not that old. The industry started
Well,
a long, long time ago. But I appreciate it because I'm not sure
I know IDC was the first industry
Mm-hmm.
analyst firm. I think that's pretty broadly known. And they really started looking at, just like they do today, and they've grown so much, but they started looking at Silicon Valley, the growth and boom of the tech industry, and, what markets were developing. So I think it really started as a business planning, a way to track supply chain, a way for Wall Street to have a lens into that demand. But I would say, like, from an AR perspective, oh gosh, I would love to know who the first AR person is. I would suspect it could even be the founders of Hewlett Packard, Bill Hewlett, excuse me, Friday morning, and Dave Packard, because they were business owners, right? So they were likely engaging in what now would be an AR role with IDC back in the day to look at what other vendors are coming into play, what is going on in the semiconductor market, all of those things. I would guess it's a business owner like that.
It's got to go
That's an
back to
interest.
one of those OG firms, I think.
Yeah,
The HPE, as was back in the day,
yeah.
the IBMs,
We're
one of
the
those.
first, right?
Yeah, one of those guys. I would wager it. Maybe an Intel back in the day, something like that.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe all of them. Maybe they helped start IDC, right?
Yeah.
Those
Well, I think,
businesses started before IDC.
yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, though. Crystal and I, when we were talking about planning this podcast, one of the things I had mentioned is because IDC, founded around the 70s, right? Late 60s, early 70s. Somebody has undoubtedly been doing analyst relations
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form since then. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. It likely was a business owner, a technology executive. And so then the follow on question becomes, at what point did that kind of branch off into a specialty? So at what point did a CEO decide, I'd
Yeah.
like to have somebody specifically responsible for interfacing with the analysts? Now, again, hard question to answer, and I'm sure we can spend episodes and episodes digging into this. But yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Jeanna. I'd love
different.
to just riffing off Nathan there. I know you've introduced me to Antonio, and he's got a really strong sort of opinion on the function that you run for HPE. Maybe just give us that CEO perspective on how he sees value in HPE terms from an analyst relations perspective. That'd be a really, I know you do a great job with your program over there, and we get lots of access to Antonio. But how does the sort of executive leadership team and right up to Antonio see the function in within HPE?
Just for a little level setting, Antonio Neri is the CEO of Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So that's who we're talking about. And we call him by first name because he's awesome and he's very approachable. He values analysts. He wants to hear what's going on in the market, not only from a competitive perspective, but from an individual analyst opinion perspective as well. And I don't want to isolate anyone listening to this that doesn't have that CEO access, because we've all had different, I've worked in different companies, had different situations going on there where you're really trying, you might be in a situation where you're trying to educate the C-suite on the relevance of AR and the strategic value. That's not the case here. As a matter of fact, we have weekly emails and meetings with him. And so it's wonderful in that executive committee here is anyone really who reports to our CEO. And it's a very active job, and there's different layers of the job here, from very high strategic levels like earnings, business planning, development, data, to how do we compete better in a market with this product. So there's so many layers of AR here, beyond chasing competitive evaluations, right? Which is a core root of our job. So there's a lot of facets. We do AR for IR, which is analyst relations for investor relations. We do AR for PR, analyst relations for public relations. So we put analysts like you, we connect you to our reporters that are writing stories about us is an example of that. And to do that, you have to have rich relationships with analysts. You have to actually collect friends. This is what I tell my team, collect friends.
Collect friends. I
Collect
love it.
friends. So yeah, it's wonderful to have that executive access. It also can be really stressful if you're not ready for it, right? Because business is tough, and some of those discussions are you might feel like, I don't know how to approach this, but if you take a step back and think strategically, you always find your way through it.
The way I
Jeanna,
think about it, Jeanna, is analyst relations execs like yourself operate in what I describe as very rarefied air. You're sort of working with the most senior leaders in your organization about the most important topics. And while you might not be sort of organizationally a senior or just job rankings
Yeah.
and all those things, you're operating in those forums as the leader of that function. How big's your team? It's not as big as somebody like a Fidelma or a Neil McDonald, but you're acting as a peer in those teams. So I always find that fascinating as a dynamic.
If I can ask two.
I was just
Sorry.
going to say, I love this talk track because I've been thinking a lot about growth mode in business. And I think that everyone is thinking about what is that magical thing that triggers growth. Is, it's people, it's timing, it's product, it's so many things have to orchestrate, right? And this is why I think analyst relations is a huge trigger. And Jeanna, like, there should be a case study on how you're doing AR and how you are in this sort of like Shangri-La of AR in some ways, both being,
Shangri-La.
yeah, I mean, what you're describing, it sounds like an optimal position, super stressful, no doubt, because of what Steven says, just the visibility and the importance of the go forward, and maintaining your status, right, as a leader in your coverage areas or your product areas. And so it just seems so great that you have this buy-in and you are embedded in all of the aspects of how you can leverage an analyst. And if I could just like put a bow around everything you said and bring it down to 3 sentences, another sort of like cheeky thing is we could all explain that as what we do for a living during our holiday dinners. And people would understand.
Nobody understands what we do.
So would it?
Absolutely. I want to ask 2 questions really quickly, and maybe a third, Jeanna, if you'll let me. I want to clarify one thing. Do you yourself report directly into Antonio?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not, and it's a large organization. We have over 60,000 employees.
No, absolutely. And I expected the answer was no. So the second question I wanted to kind of dig into a little bit more. You do seem to have direct access to Antonio or to him. How did that go about happening at HPE? I mean, I'm assuming that's something that's existed for quite some time. So I'm thinking for the AR practitioners who might be listening to this podcast,
Sort of
what does it take
aspirationally.
aspirationally, what does it take to get to that point, right? Because
you have
again,
to earn it, right? You have to be a trusted advisor, and you have to earn it. And I think that term trusted advisor is overused. I would simplify it to say you have to add value every opportunity you get. And that's how you become a trusted advisor. My position was created 3 years ago when I joined in. HPE recruited me. Before that, they had someone doing AR and PR, and in a company at our size, that just doesn't scale. It was probably a very hard job. I can't even, I don't know that individual, but I can only imagine it was set up to fail from my perspective. So I came in, I shifted the way the team thinks and works a little bit, because they were working in silos across the business units. And so we brought everyone together, and getting that executive access has grown and grown over the years. And so but it wasn't there immediately. So it's kind of interesting. It was done more at a VP higher level. And so we would educate that person and then they would go, but that's a little bit dysfunctional, right? So you want to build that trust with those individuals and get that advocacy from your executive so you can go direct. And that takes trust. Our chief marketing officer does a lot of life with me. She trusts me. She enables her team to be successful. And sometimes that means you asking for them to do that too.
Yeah. And if I can extrapolate one takeaway from what I'm hearing, and maybe this is my own personal belief and I'm projecting, but you talked about how the business can be siloed because of different product lines. Analyst relations is a great opportunity to look into each of those silos and then synthesize all the information to help bring the organization together more holistically. Is that fair?
It is fair. And just think about the shift we're all going through with AI, right? So if you're on the vendor side, like you and I are, Nathan, right? It's a little bit different because some of our products that don't compete with each other today may tomorrow. Some of our products that are in different business units may get absorbed. We have something here. It's HPE GreenLake. It's a hybrid cloud. And so a lot of our other business unit solutions are being brought into our hybrid environment. And to have that happen, you can't have those silos. You can't have someone working on a magic quadrant for SD-WAN and be completely unaware of what's going on in our hybrid cloud market. And some of those, then you even think about like developing markets. That's a different skill set. You and I know that, right? There's those traditional AR leaders that inherit a leadership magic quadrant and they just keep that engine running. And then there's that exploratory market for those traditional that veers away from that traditional AR a bit.
And I don't want to monopolize too many questions, but I just want to pull one more thing out again, because I'm thinking from the lens of a practitioner, right? I love everything you're saying. How do you organize your team? Do you have product specialists or do you have HPE generalists? How does that look?
Oh my gosh, there's so many models. It's so fascinating. And, we're constantly exploring whether we're in the right model. And I have an open dialogue. There's 12 members of our team, 2 are dotted lines. So there's really 10 that do it full time. So the way we're organized is I run corporate AR. So that's all the earnings, all the executive engagement with analysts at that high level. And we also have on that corporate side, we have a little bit of influencer AR, right? So we have a team member who does that. Then we have core products in the business units. And so those individuals, but again, this is 10 people, right? So there's not, these are lean and mean teams, very, very highly skilled professionals that are versatile. So they're in the products. And then we have 2 people overseas. And actually the 2 dotted line are overseas as well. And so basically they take the good work of, say, a product launch, and we're doing a huge product launch in the US on any given product, and they amplify it in market, in region. And so that's their responsibility. They also run those events like Mobile World Congress is coming up. So next week, everybody will be there and they're activating those campaigns there.
Nathan is sitting in Barcelona right now.
I should, how cool. So it's late at night there. Thanks for joining.
It's only 4:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
And from what I understand, it's far too early to think about dinner when you're in Barcelona. So it's
that's 10 o'clock tonight before you get round to dinner.
You'll love it.
Jeanna, could I shift a little bit to Stephen, because you said something that really triggered a conversation point. And it seems to me that your role and your team is constantly thinking about how do you drive value across your business lines and through different channels. So Stephen,
Oh, okay.
This
Here
is
we
a
go.
question for you. Not really our
Yeah.
intention, but I think it could be interesting for you as well, and probably a lot of AR people. As an analyst engaging with different models of teams, because you have fragmented teams that are in the business units and you have centralized, I'm sure that there can be pros and cons to those. And I'm kind of curious, like, what are the challenges that you experience as an analyst
Yeah, I
um,
mean,
with
it's
those
really
different models?
it's really fascinating, and I was really keen for Gina to be the first guest on the show because and I'm not just saying this, Gina. I genuinely believe you do run one of the best teams in the industry, and I'll use it as a way to describe my answer to Crystal's question. There's kind of two components to it for me. There's the strategic piece, and Gina and I chat regularly about this, and I've been invited to various events by Gina and the team that give me that strategic lens of where HPE is going as a business. And then literally later on today, I've got about as deep a dive briefing with Paul Jones on Gina's team as it's possible to have. So today I'm kind of having two very different conversations with HPE. One with Gina, which should be at that sort of strategic kind of where's the business going. I've been to earnings and investor days with Gina. That gives you the really sort of strategic lens. But then you've also got to have that. I'm also deep diving into the latest announcements that HPE made around their servers. And it's a follow up from a one to many briefing, and we're going to nerd out for an hour. So I think analysts kind of, certain analysts, and I'm unusual because I sort of sit in that boutique, sort of independent space, I've got to operate at both levels. If you're working with, say, a Gartner or an IDC analyst, maybe they're a bit more blinkered into their one particular area. Nathan, you're going to have a lot of those guys with you this week
Yeah.
who are sort of very focused in, maybe even in one technology, if it's a big enough technology space. So to answer your question, Kristen, I think it's the challenge is how do you navigate within a organization's analyst team to be able to get that strategic view of where the company's going, but also then be able to answer your technical questions right down in the sort of deep, nerdy weeds area where you've got to understand the product. You've got to be able to do both. And I genuinely believe Gina's team does that really well.
Stephen, I think you're an interesting test case for this too, because you are what I would deem either a hybrid or an influencer analyst, right?
Mm-hmm.
You sit in both worlds, and increasingly, we see a lot of analysts going independent or joining smaller boutique firms
Mm-hmm.
and doing that same thing. So it is a challenge for myself on a small team, and I imagine even Gina on a larger team, to figure out how to accurately engage with a hybrid or influencer analyst, because very easily can do AR for PR,
Mm-hmm.
but you're also a good strategic conversation. And like you just said, you're a good functional conversation as well.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
do a plug for that independent analyst. From my perspective, they move faster. They keep pace with the market at a whole different level because they do go to events. And I know, and it's really hard to travel that much. Barcelona, Nathan, it's can be a hard trip, right? It's just
Oh
far
yeah,
enough.
I'm
The jet
tired.
lags, yeah, it's just far enough. And to really maximize the value of those individuals, you have to do life with them. I talk about that a lot. You can't just come in and have a minute relationship. You have to have an ongoing rich relationship. Stephen and I have talked about each other's families. We've had dinner together, all of those things. You actually have to do life with people so you know where they're at and how their voices and what they're seeing in the market would benefit our top shelf of executives. And the interesting part about that versus say those traditional analysts like Gardner, yeah, that is amazing as well in its own right. But that's more rear view mirror, maybe today in rear view mirror. I think over the years, this is just my personal opinion, they've lost the prowess of predicting the future, some of those firms. And they used to be really good at that about 15 years ago. They used to say, here's exactly where we see the market going. And they'd get pretty close. Now, those predictions are off. You'll get a better sense of what that might look like from your own analysis and talking to a diverse group of analysts. So it's not only just maybe throwing in that term influencer. I know a lot of analysts hate that term, and they should.
Well, I've got a framework for that.
It's a love-hate now, right? Sorry.
I've got a framework for that allows me to embrace it in a way that I'm comfortable with. So if you're just really knowledgeable, but people don't know that you're knowledgeable, that's not that useful. If you're just really well known, but you're not knowledgeable, that's not useful. So the way I describe it is you want knowledge with reach, and that equals eminence.
Bravo.
So being influential is fine if you're also knowledgeable. Just being an influencer. If I had 200,000 followers on X and I knew nothing about HPE's business, that's not really valuable to Jeanna. But me having 10,000 followers and being knowledgeable about HPE is valuable. So, Crystal, we could carry on chatting for ages here, and Jeanna's always great value.
If I may underscore one thing, though, before Crystal kind of transitions into the outro here, just because we are an agnostic podcast and we love all analysts.
Yeah, we do.
I think you also hit the nail on the head. You can be an analyst at a traditional big three firm or in the expanded landscape and be all of those things, right? And I think what you're describing is that's good analyst work, right? Being incredibly knowledgeable, having reach, and having the authority to speak with said reach and knowledge.
Okay. So, I'm so sorry.
We've got another guest.
He's kidding.
Someone's going to school. Okay, have a great day,
buddy. Have a nice day.
So this is an authentic podcast.
It is totally with a 2-year-old interruption and everything. So I love what you said about the trends in the past and today. I mean, everything is moving super fast, so it makes sense that you need to have different relationships to help you navigate all the different things, right? So tell me, if we were to, again, bundle everything up about the strategy of AR, the value of analysts, and then even the changing world through AI, right? Like, what do you envision into the future? And I won't hold you to it.
Oh gosh.
What do you think things looks like? I have no idea personally. I'm that creative.
It's part of my job to enable my team to be successful at any stage. And so I think about this a lot, and there's no easy answer. AI should be used. We have several use cases that we developed in our business. We're starting to use Copilot and other tools that are internally gated for us to dial in how it might help and enhance our work. Right now, it's a time drag, right? It takes a lot more time to train and tune those models, and actually just getting very, very busy AR people to take time to do that. That's also a skill set shift and a work stream shift. But if I were to think about like the market in general, like us as professionals and where we might be in 5 years, it depends what kind of firm you're in. I think if you're in a small team, like 1 or 2 person shop, it's going to be really hard for you to innovate. You're either going to jump on and do that at night as an extra job because you need it so desperately, or you're going to fall behind from some of the bigger firms that actually already have it moving a little bit. And there's firms, there's other tech companies who have it way more dialed in than we do here. And so I think there will be a divide in analyst relations. I think competitive evaluations will be different. I think we have to watch our data, by the way. I think from an AR practitioner perspective, you need to make sure if you give a firm your data that you understand what you're giving them, because a lot of them have unique legal clauses. So you need to sharpen your saw legally and understand what that means for your business. But yeah, I think there's going to be 2 things. There's going to be some of the big AR teams that it will be a huge asset. And I think some of the smaller teams are still really going to struggle with being way too busy, having more tasks than they can manage. So I do
Well, I
think
think
there will be that divide.
that's a fantastic way to wrap us up, Jeanna. Thank you so much for being on the show. Always a pleasure to chat. You've been listening to what is episode 1 of what will be a monthly series, ARChat. Please click and subscribe and do all the things. Tell your friends. We're trying to grow a show here and we're trying to grow a community. You've been joined by I'm one of your hosts, Stephen Dickens, Nathan Herman, and Crystal Golightly on ARChat. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.